She walked nervously onto the grand stage, her old shoes barely holding together, her hands shaking as she clutched the microphone. The crowd whispered, some with pity, some with curiosity. Simon Cowell looked up from his papers, his brows slightly raised as if he wasn't expecting much. But when the poor Filipino girl from Cebu opened her mouth to sing, the entire theater went silent. Within seconds, even Simon's jaw dropped. Nobody could believe that this tiny girl, who had once sung on the streets for coins, could sound like that. This was the moment when Simon Cowell realized he had just found a true superstar. Her name was Althea. She was only 14 years old, but her life had been harder than most adults could ever imagine. Growing up in a small neighborhood on the outskirts of Cebu, Althea lived in a tiny wooden shack with her mother and two younger brothers. Her father had left when she was only 7, promising to return one day with money. But years passed, and he never came back. Her mother worked long hours washing clothes for other families, earning just enough for a small bag of rice each day. There were nights when Althea and her brothers would go to bed hungry, but her mother always smiled, saying, "We may be poor, but we're rich in dreams." Althea had always loved to sing. Her earliest memories were of her mother humming lullabies while cooking rice over a charcoal stove. Even when they didn't have food, her mother's voice would fill their home with warmth. Althea started singing along, and soon her voice became something magical, something that made people stop and listen. At age 9, she began singing in the streets to help her mother earn extra money. With an old plastic cup beside her and a cracked karaoke microphone, she would sing her heart out in the busy markets of Cebu City. Some people would drop coins, others would simply smile. But one afternoon, an old man told her, "You have a gift, little one. Never stop singing." That moment stayed with her. Every night, she dreamed of performing on a big stage, maybe one day even singing for the world. But reality was harsh. They barely had enough for food, and sometimes, her brothers would get sick. She would miss school to take care of them, sitting by their side and singing softly so they could sleep. Her mother always encouraged her, saying, "One day, Anak, your voice will take you far. Don't stop believing." One day, a group of tourists stopped to listen as Althea sang in the streets. Among them was a woman from the UK who filmed her performance and posted it online. The video showed a barefoot girl, standing under the scorching sun, singing, "Never Enough," from The Greatest Showman with such passion that it gave people chills. Within days, the video went viral. Millions of people shared it, calling her, the angel from Cebu. Offers began to pour in for her to audition for talent shows, but her family couldn't afford to travel. That's when a local foundation stepped in, raising funds to fly her and her mother to London to audition for Britain's Got Talent. It was Althea's first time on a plane, her first time leaving the Philippines. She stared out the window as clouds drifted by, whispering softly, "Mama, it feels like a dream." Her mother smiled and squeezed her hand, though inside, she was nervous. They had sold what little they had left to make the trip possible. Everything depended on this one chance. When they arrived at the London auditorium, Althea felt overwhelmed. There were hundreds of people, singers, dancers, performers from all over the world. Some had expensive clothes, others had stylists and makeup artists. Althea wore her simple dress, the same one she had worn at church back home. It was slightly faded, but freshly washed and ironed. She tied her hair back and looked at her mother. "Do you think I'll be okay, Mama?" she asked. Her mother touched her cheek and said, "Just sing with your heart, Anak. That's all you need." When her turn came, she stepped onto the stage. The judges looked up, curious. Simon Cowell adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Hello, what's your name?" he asked. Her voice trembled as she replied, "My name is Althea, I'm from Cebu, Philippines." The audience clapped politely. "And what are you going to do for us today?" Simon continued. "I'm going to sing," she said softly. "All right then, good luck," Simon replied with his usual cool tone. The music started. It was, "I Have Nothing," by Whitney Houston. The crowd didn't expect much. She was small, shy, clearly nervous. But the moment she sang the first line, the atmosphere changed instantly. Her voice was pure, powerful, and filled with raw emotion. Every note carried pain, hope, and strength. People in the audience began to stand. Simon's eyebrows shot up. He leaned back in his chair, clearly stunned. Amanda covered her mouth, eyes wide in disbelief. Even Alicia whispered, "Oh my God." As the song soared into its chorus, the entire room erupted. The sound of her voice filled every corner, echoing like a wave. You could see tears in people's eyes, not just because of her talent, but because of the story her voice told. Years of struggle, nights of hunger, dreams that refused to die. It was all there in her song. When she hit the final note, the audience exploded in applause. Everyone stood up, cheering and clapping. Even Simon Cowell, known for his strictness, slowly rose to his feet and gave a standing ovation. For a few seconds, Althea just stood there, stunned. Then she began to cry. Simon took the microphone and said, "You know, every once in a while, we meet someone who reminds us why this show exists. You came from the other side of the world, with nothing but your voice, and tonight, you gave us everything." The crowd cheered even louder. Then, with a smile that melted everyone's hearts, Simon reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down. Althea fell to her knees, covering her face as her mother rushed onto the stage. They hugged tightly as the audience continued to cheer. Tears streamed down Simon's face as he said, "You're what this world needs, pure talent and a beautiful heart." It was a moment that would be replayed millions of times across the world. Backstage, Althea couldn't stop crying. "Mama, I did it," she whispered. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering back, "No, Anik, we did it." The video of her performance spread like wildfire across social media. People from every country commented, saying how deeply they were moved. "That little girl from Cebu just sang her way into our hearts," one wrote. "She's proof that talent knows no boundaries," said another. The next day, news outlets around the world covered her story. "Poor girl from Cebu wins Simon Cowell's heart." Donations poured in from strangers wanting to help her family. A local TV network even offered to rebuild their home in the Philippines. For the first time in years, her mother didn't have to worry about what they would eat the next day. But for Althea, the most important thing wasn't fame or money. It was the chance to make her late father proud. In an interview after the show, she said, "When my dad left, I thought he forgot us. But I kept singing because I believed he would hear me one day. Maybe he will now." Those words touched millions. As the competition progressed, Althea continued to impress. Week after week, she performed songs that made people cry, from "Listen" by Beyoncé to "You Raise Me Up." Each performance felt more powerful than the last. She wasn't just singing, she was telling her life story through music. Even the judges admitted that she had something beyond talent, she had soul. During one of the semifinal shows, Simon asked her, "Where do you get this emotion from when you sing?" She smiled shyly and said, "From my mom. She's my reason." The camera cut to her mother in the audience, tears streaming down her face. The crowd erupted again with applause. It wasn't just about her voice anymore, it was about her heart. When the final show arrived, Althea chose to sing, "Rise Up," by Andra Day. As she walked on stage, wearing a simple white dress, you could feel the weight of her journey in every step. The lights dimmed, and she began to sing. Her voice started soft, almost like a whisper, then grew stronger with every line. By the time she reached the final chorus, the audience was on their feet once again. It wasn't just a performance, it was a message of hope to every child who had ever felt unseen. When the final note faded, Simon stood again, his eyes glistening. "Althea," he said, "you are what we call a once-in-a-lifetime talent. You've touched millions of hearts, including mine. You came here as a girl from Cebu, you're leaving as a global inspiration." The crowd chanted her name, and for the first time, she smiled without fear. Although she didn't win the entire competition, she won something far greater, the love of millions. Music companies began to reach out. Offers to record songs, to perform in concerts, even to appear on international shows. She became an ambassador for children's education and used part of her earnings to build a small music school back in Cebu. "I don't want kids like me to give up," she said. "If they have a dream, they should keep singing no matter what." Months later, she returned to her old neighborhood. The same streets where she once sang for coins now echoed with cheers from neighbors welcoming her home. She visited her old school, where children ran up to hug her. "Althea, we saw you on TV," they said. She smiled, knelt down, and told them, "If I can do it, so can you." Her story continued to inspire. Simon Cowell invited her back on the show the next year as a guest performer. When she walked on stage again, the audience erupted. This time, she sang, "Never Enough," the same song that had first made her viral. But now, she was confident, glowing, and free. When she finished, Simon gave her a hug and said, "You proved that dreams don't care where you're from. You're living proof that anything is possible." After the show, Simon was interviewed backstage. He said, "That girl changed me. I've seen thousands of singers, but there was something about her, the humility, the heart, the honesty in her voice. That's what true stardom is." His words became a headline across entertainment media worldwide. Over the years, Althea's life transformed completely. She bought her mother a small house in Cebu, one with solid walls and a roof that didn't leak when it rained. Her brothers went back to school, and her mother no longer had to work long hours washing clothes. But despite her success, Althea remained humble. She often visited hospitals to sing for sick children and donated part of her income to help rebuild schools in poor communities. "I know what it feels like to have nothing," she said in one interview. "So now that I have something, I want to give back." Her journey became a documentary that millions watched, from the streets of Cebu to the world stage. It showed clips of her childhood, her viral moment, and that unforgettable golden buzzer scene. Viewers cried as they watched her hugging her mother, standing under falling confetti, living a dream that once seemed impossible. The documentary won awards, but, for Althea, the greatest reward was hearing people say, "Because of you, I didn't give up." Years later, she returned as a mentor on a local talent show in the Philippines. A young contestant, nervous and trembling, asked her, "How did you do it? How did you overcome fear?" Althea smiled gently and said, "Fear never goes away. But you can sing louder than it." Those words became a quote shared across social media, symbolizing courage and hope. Simon Cowell continued to keep in touch with her. In a special episode celebrating the show's anniversary, he said, "When people ask me who my favorite discovery was, I always think of Althea. She reminded me that real stars aren't made, they're born, molded by struggle, and lit by hope." And even after all those years, Althea never forgot where she came from. Every time she performed on a big stage, whether it was in New York, London, or Manila, she always dedicated her songs to her mother. "For Mama," she would whisper before each performance, "because she taught me to dream when the world told me not to." Her music touched millions. She sang for world leaders, appeared on international talk shows, and even collaborated with famous artists. But the most beautiful thing about her was that she remained that same humble girl from Cebu, the one who sang barefoot on the streets, believing that her voice could change her life. And maybe that's what Simon saw that night, not just talent, but truth. The truth that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. The truth that poverty can't silence a dream. The truth that sometimes, all it takes to move the world is one brave voice and an unbreakable spirit. To this day, when people watch her golden buzzer moment online, they still cry. Because in her eyes, they see hope. In her voice, they hear every child who ever dreamed big despite having nothing. And in her story, they find proof that miracles are real. So whenever someone asks, "Can a poor girl from a small place really make it?" the answer will always be, yes. Because Althea did, and she didn't just make it, she changed the world with her song.